Hello and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are around the world. Welcome back. It's Wednesday. Welcome back to the Light 'em Up Lounge. I'm delighted and honored to welcome you and host you today for another special episode. We're actually into our third year now after celebrating our 2-year anniversary last week with some truly special guests, friends, and family from the community. We're back, rocking and rolling into our third year, together with Mr. Kyle Gellis from Warped Cigars. And I'm delighted and honored to welcome Mr. Gellis here with us today. I was very much looking forward to this episode, and we've been waiting quite a bit to get Mr. Gellis on. Here we are. Thanks for taking the time, and thanks for being with us. Kyle Gellis, welcome to Light 'em Up.
Well, thank you for having me, Ronhard. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it as well, and we'll have a good time with it.
Brilliant. Now, let me ask you this at the beginning. Not many people start their own e-commerce business at the age of 14. And then by the age that you are now, we're roughly the same age, can look back on such an incredible entrepreneurial track record. I believe it was a paintball industry company that you started at the age of 14, which was even distributed in Austria, where I'm from originally. So there's sort of an early connection there. But where did your entrepreneurial mindset originate from?
My grandfather was an entrepreneur, and he was very successful in selling textiles in New York City. And so it was just kind of, we always had that thing that, granddad always went out and worked for himself and did all that. And he always said, always work for yourself, you always work the hardest for yourself. And so it's kind of instilled from a younger age, but it was just one of those times when I started in the paintball industry. I saw an opportunity where something was lacking, and I decided to try to make it myself. And people wanted it when I went to the field to play paintball. And then from there, it just kind of blew up. And then utilizing, at the time, this was, I was 14, so that was 19 years ago. And, e-commerce was newer, but it wasn't really new, but it was still learning. Social media really wasn't a thing yet. So, we had Facebook, and it was MySpace back then. And, just trying to merge those worlds together about, young industry trying to capitalize on e-commerce. And so I learned, communities like forums. I learned to interact with consumers directly to learn, what they were seeking, what they were looking for, and then being able to offer that quickly. It was just kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, and that just drove it all the way forward. And, we just never looked back since then.
I appreciate it. And I like the fact that you mentioned, well, you saw an opportunity, obviously at such an early age. It takes quite a bit of ingenuity and vision and entrepreneurial spiritful thinking to sort of see something like this and then sort of take the opportunity and head towards that direction. Is that the approach that you have taken with your other endeavors as well? Sort of you saw an opportunity and then you wanted to move in, or was it more like a passionate driven? I know you're very much into the finer things in life, and obviously your father installed a lot of that in you. But was it also like an economic or a business decision, or primarily passion driven?
I think there's obviously always there's a point where it starts off as passion, and then once it becomes a viable business, you have to look at it as a business. And because passion will take you very far, but there needs to be a time where you have to switch it in order to make it business and financially driven, because you have to be able to survive. Unless you're in a situation where the success of the business isn't primarily providing you with the day-to-day means of living, and you already have that means, and that's a little bit different of a story. But if you're building something, a lot comes into it. But endeavor wise, it's always opportunity driven. It's you see something and you say, I think I can do that, or I think I could do that better. And that's really the driving factor. Is when it came to when it was paintball, I saw an opportunity, and then we started seeing the opportunity for growth. And so we was trying to find contract manufacturing, to manufacture the product for us on larger scales, but while maintaining the quality and the consistency. So it's you always find a way. If you really have a drive to do this, you will always find a way how to get it done. It's just time and dedication and being able to weather the storm. And obviously in an entrepreneurial line, when you start running a business, cash flow is your bloodline. And you need to understand cash flow, and you need to understand that really, unfortunately, if it's passion driven, your cash flow is going to be the driving factor to most of the things that you do. And in the industry that we operate in cigars, we're months out from when we place products, when we place orders to getting that product. And you have to be able to, get to that point. And so, the decisions are opportunity driven, they're passion driven. Some of the newer decisions that we make are, really, they're not so much passion or opportunity. Right now, we're really dedicated to restructuring how we showcase Warped and how we inform consumers, how we educate them. And, so we're putting a lot of our resources into driving this back end that obviously we'll be releasing this year. And, to have an interactive way to learn about tobacco, about the country, the soil types, the seed varietals, to give more information. But, that's really our driving factor now is to make sure that we inform as much as, we create.
Beautiful. Now, would you say that the approach to do things exclusively different, as you frame it, is a result of your entrepreneurial bandwidth?
Mm-hmm. I think, what I've learned through entrepreneurship is that if you're like everyone else, it's not going to work. You have to find a competitive advantage. You have to find something that will make you different. And that's what we did in the cigar world. And, a large part of that was, going against the grain and going against the trends. So our first IPCPR that we did in 2014, the trend was 60 ring gauge, 64 ring gauge, 70 ring gauges. And everyone's like, you need to make big cigars, make big cigars. But that's not how I was brought up. That's not how I didn't learn. I learned from the Cubans, and I learned from my father when he smoked Cubans and smaller ring gauges, smaller Obatolas. And, I didn't blend that way. So our first trade show, we came out with 36.6, and everyone else was coming out with 70s and 60s. And so people were driven to that because it was different. And, our packaging and our branding is very old world and very old world influenced. I love bringing back old brands from the 1800s, early 1900s, and finding those driving factors and those inspirational points to bring back the beauty of cigar art that even still to this day, here we are in 2022, and I'm looking back at brands from the 1800s for inspiration, and I see that they stood the test of time. And it's always looking where most people don't want to look, because it's more difficult to find and to dig, to find those little hidden pockets, those little gems. It's, if you want to follow the trend, you'll probably be successful for a little bit, but it lacks you learning how to be creative and be different. And that's what's going to get you further in anything and what you do, whatever business or endeavor that you're in. Difference is a driving factor.
I couldn't agree more. Now, speaking about a few of your other endeavors, briefly before we come back to cigars, but you're a multi-entrepreneur now with ventures into coffee, wine, even consultancy, I believe. Do you sometimes feel like there's a danger of spreading yourselves too thinly? I vividly remember the book, The One Thing. And if you think about today's highly specialized world, everybody's sort of yearning to specialize even more and to niche down. And to be frank, that was never my philosophy, because I consider myself a polymath, and I want to take sort of an holistic approach and picture to experience design. But did you ever think about that or feel that certain way?
Well, I think if anyone is an entrepreneur, is driven in that direction, you unfortunately you never feel that you're spread too thin, because you think you could keep going forever and ever and ever, and that the energy is endless. One of the reasons that I'm able to do what I do and able to have multiple aspects of industry across the luxury sector is because I have a great team here at Warped that I've had for a very long time, and everyone understands the values, and it's really team driven. You can't do it all on your own. You need to have a strong team, you need to have a strong family, a strong support system that will help you along the way. But all of the industries that I operate in all have a similarity that are driven around all three. From cigars to coffee at the time, to wine, to alcohol, to consulting. All of it's driven through the luxury sector, all luxury consumable. And so you're really kind of with the same people and you don't feel like you're being spread from your, one side of your brain to the other in terms of industry. We all share very similar characteristics and qualities in terms of the people and the way we operate and how we appreciate time and the art of what we do. And I believe that's a large success. If you wanted me to, I believe if I was, running Warped and I had a mechanic shop, I don't think that would be, I don't think that'd be able to do that. But, being able to operate in a luxury consumable sector is a little bit easier when you're just staying in the same house.
So it's sort of diversification, but all within the realms of a cohesive world where it all sort of comes together and makes sense.
Correct. If you look at the prime example would be like LVMH, is that they're in every sector, but it's pretty much every sector in the same way and the same purpose. You just have to stay, and they're very good at that. They stay in their house and they stay in their own little world.
Now that's interesting. Do you actually think that most luxury industries and most consumable luxuries, I come from the wine and spirits world, do you think that they work the same way, and that you can sort of reach and tickle consumers similarly when it comes to cigars, spirits, coffee?
I believe they do, and I believe they do from a management standpoint, from an art standpoint of creating the product, from a time standpoint of how much time is dedicated to creating it, with cigars, coffee, wine, spirits that are aged in cask, not vodkas or gins or anything. Time is a major component, and patience is a major component. I believe the art form is extremely similar. The process is different, but the overall understanding of what is needed to create greatness is the same. And in terms of consumers, it is very much the same. As the consumers have disposable income that they're spending on a luxury product for an experience. And they're very brand loyal based upon how that experience is each and every time through consistency. And that's really kind of an inspirational point that I took from the luxury sector is making sure that the experience for the consumer is as top as it could be, because you are spending your hard-earned money on a consumable for your enjoyment when you need leisure. And I don't want to be the reason that if you had a bad day and you're just looking forward to that cigar at the end of the day to make it better, I don't want to be the reason that cigar and your day got just worse. So I always have said it in multiple interviews. You can read about it. You can hear it. We take your enjoyment very seriously here at Warped, and day in and day out is what we do. I was just, before I jumped on here, I was on the phone with Anganorsa and with Tobacco La Isla in Dominican Republic, telling them to send up production samples because they have their Holy Week coming up and I can't go down when I wanted to. But I said, we have production sitting. I need to taste them. I need to make sure that we're on the same point. That's just exactly what we do day in and day out. The shipment that I have here came in a few days ago. We smoke, we validate, we make sure. If something's wrong, we do not let it out of here. If these came back and they came back from transit and there's too much humidity from the transit and they need a month or two to sit, they will sit with us. They will not get shipped out, not until it is 100% what it should be. And I believe that is, the same thing across, consistency across the luxury sector, is that they do look out for that, and that's what we do. And I believe that that's why we have that exclusively different, stage, is because we do things that are just different. And we do it all for the consumer to make sure that your experience is the top that it can be.
Damon was just commenting over on Facebook, watching the live stream, that quite a few of the things that he has learned about making cigars and about the industry came from asking questions on your Instagram lives, which I think is beautiful and fantastic. And when you started your journey with cigars, you learned the ins and outs of cigars, blending, rolling at El Titan de Bronze. You mentioned that opposed to industry trends, you always took inspiration from tradition, from the great Cuban classics, but then you sort of slightly adapted and modernized. Where do you find the balance in an industry that is so heavily relying on tradition and craftsmanship and century-old knowledge being passed down from generation to generation, yet at the same time you sort of need to bring that modern spark of innovation, digitalization, and just using the means of modern media even?
It's like you said, it's like a perfect storm of old meets, meets new. So essentially, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel with cigars. A cigar will always be a cigar. What we can fix and what we can make better is the processing of cigars, the fermentation, the aging, the drying. Anganorsa and our suppliers have that down to a T. They don't need that. What we do need and what we can make better is the farming practices. When in the countries that Nicaragua, Honduras, Ecuador, Dominican Republic, there are farming techniques and that we've learned help rejuvenate the soil and can make better product. They can make better tobacco. We don't do it in the tobacco industry as much as we should. We don't have rejuvenative soil or biodynamic farming, like the wine world does, like in Burgundy and in Napa Valley, more or less, more recently, organic and biodynamic farming and giving back to the land. That's, I believe, is the next step and the next pillar of the foundation of building a sustainable and better, cigar future is through the farming practices. And, obviously the workforces in these countries are very skilled and they have been for a long, long time. But the farming practices, I believe, could be better. And will they get better? That's a generational shift. I believe that it's the next generation that's going to take over those farms and the ownership of that property and be the stewards of that land. I believe that is up to them and the younger generation to understand really, what's going on. And, there's so much science now after the past 30, 40 years in other industries of farming, what happens, and I believe that, the wine industry has proven a large amount of that. What happens if you use these practices? A lot of biodynamic farming, if anyone knows anything about biodynamic farming, it sounds like a bunch of witchcraft and voodoo, with the moons and, the alignments and proper days to pick and not pick and days to plant. And like there's a whole schematic of it, but they've done the research. They have all the knowledge and it's getting better. The land is more alive. There's more organism. There's more biodynamic life in the soil each and every year. So they've been practicing the farming. So that's the next major step, I believe, to craft a more sustainable tobacco industry. If you plant a farm and you harvest that land, if you harvest 10 acres, that land needs to rest for 2 years, or a year between crop. You need to put cover crop down. You need to give back to the land. It's a hard middle to have because the farmer needs to grow tobacco in order to make a living, but the land needs to rest in order to give it, quality material. And so that's the next step in progression in terms of merging old and new. In terms of how cigars are sold, that's, you have your traditional routes of brick and mortar and you have your online platforms, online being the more, newer one. And, that's going to keep growing as the world gets more digitized. And unfortunately with local municipality laws and opening up new cigar shops and this and that, those are getting tighter and tighter. And so e-commerce is a large part of the future that I believe, consumers and brands have to look at. And that's another thing about how, old meets new, but, that's not changeable. Local ordinance laws don't want it. If we wanted to, just to give you an example, if we wanted to go, we're grandfathered here that be in this warehouse as a tobacco operation, we couldn't go and get a new warehouse. Our town won't let us because we were here before. And that's the hard part is like, if it's just that for us to have an operation where people don't come, this is where we store, this is where we ship, the office is here, the staff is here, how hard is it for someone to open a new cigar shop? They're kicking them out. Like we have a new development over here. The cigar shop's been there for 15 years. They wouldn't re-sign the lease. They kicked them out because they're putting the brewery there. They're trying to put more restaurants. They want to be family friendly. That whole thing. So that's getting harder and harder, which is why I believe it's unfortunate, but I believe that e-commerce is going to be a large platform for our industry moving forward.
Sometimes it feels like there's this ongoing debate between the traditional brick and mortar side with the online sort of posing a little bit of a threat towards that. And of course, we still all champion the traditional family-run brick and mortar businesses. But as you said, the digital is here and it's here to stay. Do you see that separation or that little conflict there as well? Or do you think it's just how you manage both and they all need to be there in order for the future to be prosperous for the industry?
I believe that there's always going to be your traditional brick and mortar routes, and the hard part why a lot of people switch to consumer-wise, switch to an online platform is, I mean, there's a few major ones. One is that selection process. A local brick and mortar may only want to stock General, Altadis, Fuente, and they don't have the selection for the new style consumer, and they don't want to because they don't get a deal from smaller brands like they can get from these large corporations. And then it's uneducated staff that just man it, who aren't really like, when you walk into a cigar shop, it should be a friendly environment. It should have, a very calming effect. And then you walk into a cigar shop, no one tries to assist you. Even though you know what you're looking for, you still would like to see someone be like, what do you, can I help you look for something? What do you like to smoke? Like you're still looking for that guiding hand in case there may be something that you don't know about, and that's getting harder and harder. That's just the skilled, workforce that needs to know about cigars. That's where the educational part comes in. Obviously then there's a price point issue. It's like, brick and mortar have large overhead, as here in the US right now, obviously, we have a huge increase in rent from commercial to residential, real estate across the country, and people are getting priced out, and it's just, or they're just not re-signing, or they want to sign, or they want to sell a building, or whatever the case is. So they have to charge more, whereas an online platform has the ability to cut that overhead out by having a warehouse. But they'll offer you a bigger selection with free shipping and have it in 2 days. And Amazon completely changed how the consumer demands their product. They want it in 2 days. They order it, they want it. And if the brick and mortar has to order that box that they don't have, that the consumer wants, 9 times out of 10, the consumer is going to walk outside, they're going to get on their phone and then click. And then with Apple Pay, they can pay in 2 seconds, everything's pre-saved, and they'll have it 2 days later. Whereas the store, like, we may not have it, as a manufacturer, may be back ordered. They lost that sale, so it's an ever evolving problem that comes along with the growth of an industry. But like, if you look at US imports for this year, like we're doing very, very well with premium cigars. There's, people are enjoying cigars more. There's new cigar smokers. There's so much growth going on right now that it's great for the industry. But that's believed because we're educating people. They're enjoying that, the hobby more. They're telling their friends about it. They're getting together, so like the growth is there. It's whether or not that the brick and mortar can sustain that, or does the online platforms kind of take over. I think they've been operating together for quite some time, and pretty much everyone is still there. I think that COVID did more damage to small brick and mortars who they were forced to not sell, they couldn't do anything about it because government came in and shut them down. It wasn't because e-commerce shut them down. It was because the government literally wouldn't let people in their door. They wouldn't let them operate. And I think that, there will always be battles, or the retailer will always say that it's, brick and or e-commerce is killing us, or whatever the case is. But in reality, consumers have their purchasing habits, and, they're going to want what they want, and they're going to find a way, whether it's today at this shop, or they're going to find it at this shop, or they'll drive 5 miles up the road to the next shop to get it. They'll find a way to get it. So it's an ever evolving thing that I don't think will get solved. I think we all just live together in harmony.
Good point. Now, two questions. First, because you mentioned the tremendous growth, do you think it's sustainable?
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, because you came from the e-commerce and online world first,
yeah,
and Warped Cigars came later along your entrepreneurial journey, do you think that was an advantage that gave you a different perspective on the cigar industry? And so you could sort of naturally and organically from the very beginning do things sort of the opposite way?
Well, and to start with the growth and is it sustainable? I think your biggest bottleneck in that is going to be your labor force in Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Honduras, because can they have the skilled workforce to be able to create the quality that we're all used to, been enjoying for the past, 8 years, 10 years, as the cigar world has gotten better and better with its quality for the most part. Can you ramp that and keep it without scaling too high that you come down in quality? That's your biggest issue. But then also your tobacco demand. We believe that there will be a filler shortage this year across, the industry because of the demand, and then what passed as a certain grade may get bumped down or whatever the case is. So it's can we scale it more and more? It's up to, in reality, it's up to Mother Nature, whether or not she wants to give us a good harvest or not, a bountiful one, a quality one. I think a large, we have to remember is that, the item that, we all enjoy, this comes from the earth, and it is susceptible to rain, wind, drought, and bad handling from a human. And then all the way to the when it's a finished product. This is Mother Nature and man meeting to make one singular thing. And so I think that you have to give us, if we have a bad crop year, we have a bad crop year. There's nothing we can do about it. There's no process to make it better once it comes out of the ground. Like it is what it is. And this goes back to the farming practices. And then we can even go further and further into climate change and all that stuff, but that's just a conversation you don't want to get involved with but that's really what you have to look at when you look at these products and you look at cigars in general is that this is someone's day right here. So a human rolled this, and if they're having a bad day, if there's something's going on in their life, much like something can be going on in our lives, if we have a bad day at work, we take it out on something, they're going to take it out on that item that they have in their hand. And I've seen it. A roller has a bad, an argument with his girlfriend that morning, and he comes in, rolls cigars, and he rolls them angry. And those things, he's bunching them, and he's just, got it, and he's just tightening. And you gotta get him off. You gotta get him off the table. You gotta get him out of there, because we've had to do that before. Where I've gone down to Nicaragua, I'm like, because he's rolling one of our products, he needs to stop. Send him home, because I'm like, all this product that he rolled today, just put it to Segundos and give it to me. I'll take it. Don't put that in the bodega. And because that's the visualization of being down there is being able to see stuff like that and having watchful eyes. And then the second part, was the advantage to start in an e-commerce, is that I believe that it gave an advantage to the marketing standpoint, because my e-commerce journey, back then SEO and all these things that are just everyday life now, if you're an e-commerce, guys or an e-commerce business, that was all new. So we had to find a way to market and talk directly with the consumer. And back then, before Instagram and before, Twitter, and back then was MySpace and all that, we used forums. And I know forums now are Reddit and Discord. And, we had to use those and learn how to communicate with our consumers to learn what they wanted. And that's what we did with Warped. Warped has no reps. It has no brokers. We are strictly an all in-house organic growth company. We went to the consumers. We asked them what they wanted, what sizes they liked. We made all these niche sizes, even back then, 38s, 40 by 4s, all these crazy small, connoisseur sizes that are, were a dying breed back then. And we still listen to them all the time, and it's a direct line of communication. If you need to talk to us and you're a consumer, talk to us. If you have an idea, we love hearing that stuff, because, I can make whatever I want to make, but, I'd rather make something that people are going to enjoy or think are cool, and they want to see it come back. Is a ninfa going to come back? All right, well, let's try. And I'll do that. Some guy will mention it to me on Instagram. He's like, oh, I'd love to see a ninfa in this vitola. I'll go try to blend it when I'm in Nicaragua. And I believe that gave us the advantage of learning how to communicate and listen to our consumers is a large part of the success of Warped. And we still do it. It's still, like I said before, our day is dedicated to making sure that the cigar you have in your hand from us is the best experience it could possibly be. And I've been doing this for 15 years, and that's always been my guiding factor.
Do you think that it was a sort of a conscious decision back then to position yourself as very niche and very different? Because I would assume that if you today do what you said, and that is ask the consumer what they would like to have, the answer will always be Toros and 6x60s and probably above. Yet what you did was the opposite to that. So was it truly listening to the consumer and what they were telling you, but then only a small niche of the broad consumer spectrum?
I think people that, we listen to them. Actually, no one who contacts me and asks me to do certain sizes is asking for 60x6s and 70x7s. They're not asking for that. I think the people who gravitate to Warped are the ones who are truly looking for something unique. that they're truly looking and they understand the values that we have and the history that I have and where I got my knowledge from, El Titan de Bronze, all from level 9 master rollers, from back when Willie Herrera was still there, to like that early on, like, we are as traditional as it comes. Now we've given it a different twist, but we literally are as tradition as they come. I won't make anything over a 52 ring gauge. And I still don't. Greg Matola from Cigar Aficionado said he would call me out on that 10 years ago when I finally made one over 52. And he ain't never been able to call me out on it. I was having a cigar with him in New York City about 2 weeks ago. And he's like, I still haven't been able to call you out on it. I'm like, you never will. You never will. I never want anything to smoke that, my father wouldn't smoke when I was a kid. And, it's tradition, like I like today, like I was sampling a cigar I'm contemplating producing. I did the blend in November. It's a 40 by 4 5/8, and it's tradition. It's just what we enjoy to make, what we want in 20 years or 30 years. I want to look back at the portfolio and be like, these are still sizes that people love today. These are still sizes that are classic, that will always be here. And it's the same thing that reigns true with our artwork, for Warped. Like I said before, I'm still looking at art from 1800s and still being like, wow, like over 100 years later, you are still that piece of art is still inspiring me to recreate, take inspiration from it and create something that could last that long. It's truly amazing. I don't know many other industries that you can do that. Back then they had the fortitude and the mental fortitude to see that there was beauty in the cigar itself and the art.
And you're bringing them together in a wonderful way. And interestingly enough, because you mentioned luxury before, luxury always has a component of timelessness. So I think you absolutely nailed it right there.
Yeah, it's the only way to go with our industry, is that you can have so much attention brought onto our industry, and we do have that from the FDA. And as a younger brand owner, I believe that it's one of my positions in the industry is to be the younger guy who keeps guiding it down that traditional path, not deviating from what built it to what it is. And that's just hundreds of years of people before me who are in this industry and dedicated, their lives to creating it, and making sure that, I do my best to pay homage to those people who did it before me, because I want to be able to leave it behind and have people maybe in 100 years look back at Flor de Valle or La Hacienda and be like, wow, like those are still, that the artwork is great. The cigar, you could read about the history of it, because, obviously the internet's going to be, in the future, but like, I want to leave that behind. And I don't want something that was a fly by of the night kind of just gimmick, thing when it comes to Warped. It's just try to leave back, a legacy, try to leave it a little bit, better than I found it.
Bravo. Brian had a question. Over to
Hi,
you.
Sure.
Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
So talking about luxury and your love of history and artwork and stuff. To me, the logo looks very modern, and my imagination kind of goes in the other direction. So you're into paintball, and I'm wondering if you're into skating or music at all, and if the name Warped has any connection to the Vans Warped Tour from back in the day, or just a coincidence.
Actually, that's just a coincidence. The name actually was the name of my paintball company, was Warped Customs. And the word warped was actually my nickname when I played professional paintball.
Nice.
So it was such a large part of my building years as a teenager, because I started, playing paintball when I was 8, and I started playing Division 2 and Division 1 when I was 14. And I got the name on my back. And when I started my next journey, I was like, this has to come with me. It's been with me for so long that I have to take it with me. But music, no, I always get that. I always get that question, the Vans Warped Tour. That was just a coincidence. But it is a large part of my identity and who I am. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Cheers.
My pleasure. Cheers. Take care.
And let's bring in Macy, who also has a question for you.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
We can, Macy.
Okay. Well, do you want? Well, you may. They said you got it. My mic wasn't working earlier, and you're not that lucky. It started working. I'm a big fan, Kyle. First of all, it's first time in my life. I was born in 1985, fellow millennial. millennial power. It's the first time I get to talk to someone prominent, and you are in the cigar business, and I get to call you young man. So I like that. Jovencito. So that makes me feel better and a little less gray today. I've got a couple comments, notes I wrote down. I may never get to talk to you again, so I'm going to be greedy, but I'm going to be fast. First of all, you're in luxury brands for a living. I just spend all my money on them, but I completely agree. For example, like bourbon, all this stuff, and I'm a bourbon lover, and sadly, that craze is never going to end.
No.
I don't think this craze is going to end because they're great products. Allegedly, they're addictive. I mean, anything enjoyable is addictive, as I try to tell my wife. So, I mean, I don't think a lot of people that are starting to smoke are just going to stop smoking. I think the issue is going to be, can the quality, all the scaling issues you brought up, I think are on point. I agree with you 100% on the online stuff. Reinhard and I have talked he's a true brick and mortar guy. I love brick and mortars, but you got to understand, Reinhard lives in Vienna, where the cigar stores are museums for the 1400s. You have, for most of us, your local brick and mortar, I hate to say it, is not, and I think the future for brick and mortar is going to be lounges that sell alcohol, that have an online component, and then a lot of direct or other online. So I think you really were ahead of the curve on that, and I commend you. And so I want to, by the way, I also want to thank you, really. You've produced the only cigar that my wife has ever liked me purchasing.
That's
he
amazing.
uses the Guardian of the Farm. I believe it's the Rambo, the Robusto is her makeup box. She loves the dog on it. So
Beautiful.
That actually, my favorite cigar of yours is the Siri 1988. I also think it has the best packaging, but that's not the one that she likes for her makeup boxes. So
That's good. You get to smoke them.
Okay, quick questions. One, can you talk a little bit? I love your Bonanno, the case, the banana.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those cases? If you have one, maybe you can show and talk about the stitching on those. Those to me are incredible.
Guys, you like them. So I don't have one on me right now. Actually, we sold out of them. It actually has no stitching whatsoever on it. It actually uses what they call a hyperfuse technology, where they fuse the leather together. It came from a very small artisan manufacturer in Spain, and they had this technology that they did it by hand. They have this basically like you would imagine like a soldering iron, but specifically for leather, and they ride the grooves around and they fuse it all together. So there's actually no stitching on it whatsoever. Unfortunately, they closed during the pandemic, and they didn't reopen, because I tried to reach out to them about 6 months ago, because I wanted to do a small run of an idea I had. And they came to me and they emailed me back like, hey, we closed shop. We may reopen. We don't know. So if anyone has one of those cases, they're phenomenal. They're truly unique. Unfortunately, just can't bring them back right now. And I have yet to find any other Altieri that has that capability.
And your personal one, how do I get that? You don't have any back there? You say no, you don't have any?
We have, I think.
Reference the yellow. I liked the yellow.
I do not have any yellow. I think I have one brown one that I believe is in my travel bag for when I travel. So when I have to, I'm in a rental car and they tell me not to smoke and I don't listen, I just pull one out. But for the most part, no, those have been all gone for quite some time.
Okay, thank you. I will. I'll try to twist someone else's arm to get one.
You may find a random retailer who still has them. If you email me, if you email help@warpedcigars.com, we may know a few who may have them, and if we can track them down, we'd be happy to put you in touch with them.
And if I may, my wife's from Colombia. I actually just finished a coffee small area called Tolima, Tolima. It has the best mild. I actually prefer mild. You taste it more, has more caffeine. Get some Tolima coffee sometime. It's
Tolima.
Really, I love I actually think Kenya is the best coffee in the world, kind of like Cameron. She gets pissed at me, but the Tolima is the best Colombian. It's really, that's a little insider tip.
That's good. I love Ethiopian Yirgacheffe.
That's hard to beat. And if you like the coffee, you can send a case with the thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Keep it up.
I will. Thank you.
By the way, please allow me to insert a little shameless plug, because Macy, besides being an avid cigar lover, is an experienced attorney at law, and he wrote a fantastic analysis of the recent report of the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and the whole FDA regulatory evolution over the years. So if you head over to lightemupworld.com on our blog, you'll find Mace's incredibly insightful and valuable article. So,
and if I may, Kyle, you as someone with a cutting edge millennial digital brand, I shamelessly think you should read, because
Sure.
I believe you in particular have more. It's just, because you do things in a cool way, and they don't like that.
No, they don't. And actually, my older brother is an attorney, but now not an attorney because he's a lobbyist. But he's a regulatory lobbyist against it. So like he's always wanted to get his hands on the FDA regulatory thing. So we'll see what happens when he gets his hands on it.
Now, obviously, without spoilering Mace's article, but one of the takeaways, obviously, is looming threats, also in particular on cigar online media and the whole realm of social media. As you rightfully said, Mr. Gellis, was so important for you in the evolution of Warped as well. Mm-hmm. What is your perspective on the near future, and then how do you adapt the way that you communicate and market and still try to stay as closely to the consumer as possible, even though, cigar, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube might be a thing of the past over the next couple of years? Well,
first and foremost, if they did that, I believe that you would have to then look at alcohol and stop alcohol advertisements, because on Instagram, you can pay to sponsor alcohol. So you can get sponsored posts for scotch, whiskey, same thing with Facebook. So I believe big tobacco would kind of argue that, because if they're going to get dragged down, they're going to drag down anyone else who they want to drag down in that perspective. Second of all, if they do get away with it and they do take away your free speech as an adult, and you have a right to choose what you do, they take away your free speech and they censor you, then you're going to have to look, and brands, I believe, and we're in the midst of doing this ourselves, is building your own network to house in a private sector. You can't tell me what I can and can't do on a private thing that I do for my business. Obviously, Discord is a large thing of that's coming up, but also brands can also get their software for, forums that they want to launch on their platforms, for consumers to intertwine, or if they want to create, a mass market, singular form that I think every brand can get behind as a safe haven, for, people who enjoy cigars to come and chat, and you can market that, and you have to do that. If obviously this is all very, very down in the future, but it's something that would have to be looked at now in order to market it and get it consecutively going. And then understanding that if this does happen, that we do have a golden parachute in order to maintain our ability to communicate with one another on a mass scale, because everyone here, listening right now from different parts of the world, and we can all get together. We need a singular place to still find that. That's where, Instagram, social media, Twitter, Facebook, these groups, it's a place for people to go and communicate. And, and that's going to be the hard part if they take that away. And like, there's plenty of people who have Instagram friends that they know that they communicate with daily, or they have a herp with right now, and they're just talking. There are groups that are set up solely that guys from, they can just jump in whatever they want. There's always someone on there smoking a cigar. There's always that ability to communicate. That's really what our industry is about, is just having a chat with someone who you may not know at all. You sit down in a lounge or in a virtual lounge, and you and I don't know each other, but we have the same commonality, the same love. And guess what? We find out that we actually have a lot more in common. You leave knowing one another a little bit more than you did before. And then you grow on that. Friendships grow that way. Business relationships grow that way. We're going to need something like that. I believe that it's a brand. If you want your brand to remain relevant in terms of the people who enjoy your product, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have a place for them to communicate with you. Because right now we all rely on someone else's ability to communicate with each other. And I believe that we have to change that, and we're in the midst of doing it. Obviously right now we're looking at developing our own platforms, our own servers for people to freely come in, whether it's about Warped or not. It's irrelevant to us, as long as it's about, what we love, and that's cigars, our lifestyle. It's a place for people to go to hang out. But other brands need to know that it's not what we're trying to take from you, when it comes to that aspect. It's like, no, we need a place for everyone to go if that happens. And eventually that conversation, if this mass shutdown, if it ever does happen, which I think that they may have a real problem with, is because that's just taking away free speech for adults and, a way to communicate. Now, if it's a policy of a private business, then that's different. They already shut down tobacco advertising, which, is under, they don't want that because of federal regulations or whatever the case may be. But I believe that will be a part of the future. A brand is going to have to essentially watch over for itself and its consumers, but also people. Emails are great, but emails can be delayed. We have Discord now, and if I have Discord open on one of the monitors in my office, so all day long, if people jump in and they ask questions, within a minute or two, I'm answering them. It's an easy, instant way.
I think you're absolutely spot on in your analysis, and I applaud you on all the steps and the effort that you're taking in order to be ahead of the curve and to anticipate what might happen in the future. What I'm curious about there is, do you think if we all were to look for alternatives to Facebook and Instagram and whatever, would that lead to a more fragmented way of communicating with each other, because everybody is probably in the same position and trying to set up what you're doing as well? Because the great thing about Facebook in the days was sort of everybody is on Facebook, so you can use that as a consolidating platform, and it has a uniting effect, because pretty much everybody in the cigar community, with a few exceptions, is on there. So that if you spread your content there, at least in former days, you would have an organic reach to a larger audience. Whereas I assume on Discord, you have a channel that is Warped dedicated, and you stay within your bubble.
Or you don't, and you join one of the larger groups. The hard part is that's the part that's really hard to go over, is that, what if they did? Well, if they did, then it's going to happen, quickly. And then everyone's going to scatter anyway to retain what they have. So it's really difficult to navigate exactly what would happen. Like right now, it's still scattered if you would, because there's hundreds of groups on Facebook. There's hundreds of Discords. There's hundreds of Instagram profiles, or thousands or millions. You know what I mean? There's just so many scattered portions. Then there's groups that, reign more true, and they have a very loyal following, against, they have more members, and there's a much more loyal community. And it was a little bit easier back actually when there were forums, if you remember. And then there was Reddit. Reddit was a great one. And then Reddit came in, and then everyone got pissed when they shut down the trading aspect of it all. But back 10 years ago, there was BOTL.org, there was puff.com, and Cigar Asylum. And pretty much those were the three reigning forums. And they all worked really well, but they all got killed once social media came out. And then social media, instead of everything was consolidated to three forums, it scattered it across multiple channels. So we already have that scattered effect. But it's great because obviously the technology has been better, and you can live share, and you can, lives, all that stuff. You can do all these amazing things that you couldn't do all that time ago. So it's just really difficult to say, because there are the what ifs are so large that it's almost impossible to really understand what would happen if it actually happened. If Facebook does it, Instagram is going to do it. So that's two major ones killed right there. Twitter, that's live feed, so that's a bit different. That's not channels. So your biggest ones are Instagram and Facebook. But then you have Reddit, and Reddit pretty much allows chats of tobacco. You just can't sell things. You can't trade things anymore. And I've come to learn that people miss that heavily. It's a great place for people to try to get, cigars in a spot you can reach a mass amount of people instead of trying to hunt it. It was a lot of people were upset about that. But it's very difficult to say. It's just that you need to have a backup plan. Whether or not that backup plan is good or not, you need to be thinking about it minimally, about being able to secure a safe haven for at least people who enjoy, Warped or cigars in general. The hard part is getting everyone on board to understand, like, this is not if the brands all got together and we're like, listen, we need one spot for everyone to go and we need to market it, like, go here, we're all here, and we're not trying to take or market against anyone else. Like, this just needs to be we don't have any say in anything. We can't even advertise on it. Just a free platform for you guys to go. I'm not saying it should be decentralized in terms of advertising or, but just no, we're going to pay for this. This is a safe haven to go. And here, that's what you would have to do if they shut that down. But then once again, it's very difficult to say if they actually will or not.
Yeah, fully agreed. Allow me to go back a little bit to the nitty gritty of the actual cigars, the tobacco, the raw material, and the way you manufacture. Cuba, as we learned from the first cigars that you ever savored, has been the initial inspiration. Obviously, you had your first tremendous learning curve with Altitan de Bronze. You worked with Aganorsa Leaf Tapsa, and recently you started with Hostos Quesada Fernandez in the DR with La Isla. How do you go about selecting those people that you're working with, or the factories that you work with? Is it primarily on a personal basis because you share the same values and beliefs and the tradition? Or has it also something to do with the specific aroma and taste profile that you feel like you can find specifically with those people?
Well, when I first started working with Sandy, it was because I went to Little Havana, and back 15 years ago, there was a lot more factories on Calle Ocho. Not so much anymore. They've all closed. And I went to each factory and I said, hey, basically, like, in a short synopsis, like, my name's Kyle and I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, I want to learn more about blending cigars and doing this, and will you help me? Because at that point I had no problem, like, going after what I wanted and going in for my first business, and I had a lot of doors slammed in my face. And Sandy was the only one who said, literally, sure, come on in. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the fact that it was like a motherly thing. I still call her my Cuban mother. And, she took me in and she said, yeah, sure. And she brought me in and we started going over tobacco and in the bale room. And she gave me a roller because I didn't know how to roll bare rolls at the time. I didn't know how to do any of that. She gave me a roller. She said, well, they're going to roll you, a little puritos, and you smoke and tell them what you want and what you think, and we'll see what happens. And that was, 15 years ago. And so from there, like, that's how that relationship started. It wasn't because I sought out El Titan. Back then El Titan was not what it is today. It was, Sandy saw something in me and I was like, well, she's going to help me. Like, okay. And I kept going back down every week. And I did that for years. And, from there, when we started growing, I asked Sandy, I was like, Sandy, like, I'm the only one I've ever made cigars with. Like, I'm like, I need to make more cigars, but I can't keep making them here, because she was growing at this time. This is like when La Polina started to come, Cornelius and Anthony. And so, like, it was growing and it was getting harder and harder to get cigars done. And she's like, well, I only trust one person, and that's Eduardo Fernandez from Manganorsa. And so she calls up Tropical Tobacco, which is their Miami arm, where their office is. And she was like, okay, drive over there. You're going to meet with Paul Palmer. And 20 minutes later, I drove over there and I sat down with Paul Palmer and we had a talk, and we went in the back and we started working with material. We did the blend for Flor de Valle in the back of the Miami warehouse, and they made it in Nicaragua. The samples got sent up and I was in Nicaragua 2 weeks later. And that was it. It was because of Sandy. It was because the personal relationship. And obviously I was already used to Aganorsa material. I was a big fan of Dion and Illusione. I was a big fan of their earlier work when Pete was still working with Aganorsa material way back in like 04, 05, before he went to my father. And, or my father split off and had their own farms and stuff like that. And so I was a big fan of that material. And Sandy had the material at Titan. and I was just used to it. And so it was kind of, just a simple right over. And I worked with those two factories exclusively for the longest time. And then, I wanted a new challenge. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to the DR. And I'm like, but the DR, I'm like, I don't know anyone. But then I knew Hostos for a long time, obviously from the Quesada time, then from the cigar rings time when I worked at cigar rings for a few years. And then he told me one day that he was striking out with a factory, and Hostos is, younger. He shares the exact same vision that I have when it comes to quality. And he said, come over to Santiago. So I jumped on the plane, I flew to Santiago, picked me up at the airport, went right to the factory, and I just started to work with him. And, a little later, Chinchale was born. And then Companion came, and, I'm leaving in 3 weeks to go down to go see him again. And, I'm there pretty much once or twice a month in the DR. And, it's organic how it happens. And it's not so much I'm not looking for a specific aroma or taste. It really depends. Do you understand the vision that we have for Warped? Do you share do you share that quality? Do you share that vision? If you don't, I don't work with you. Because I got asked a lot, during my time coming, from where I started to like where Warped is, and a lot after GR88 got number 3 with Cigar Aficionado, a lot of factories came forward and wanted me to jump ship. And I was like, I'm a loyalist. I'm not leaving my family. Like, you're not going to make me leave because you say you can offer, trinkets and, whatever. I'm like, it ain't happening. And, so we're very loyal to who we work with. And that's why the relationship in the cigars are so great. It's because they look after them like it's their own. It's not one way. It's not a one-way thing. We both have to work together. If you don't have that vision, you don't have that understanding with us, I'm not the easiest to deal with, when it comes to what I actually expect and what I, expect and demand of, our manufacturing partners, and they deliver it every single time because they share the vision and they know that if it's not up to quality, it ain't gonna get by us. And that's really why we have the people who we work with, and we're very happy. We have a very deep understanding with each other, and that's just the way it's been. And that's what I believe is a large part of the success rate of Warped in general, is because the family that manufactures our products, they are family. Don't that's just a word. They are family to us. They watch over it. When we're not there, I don't live in Esteli, I don't live in Miami, I don't live in Santiago, but we have the same vision and the same roadmap to how to better this industry and how to make sure our consumers are happy.
You're a true wine connoisseur, and we talk about terroir quite a bit on the show with our various guests here as well. With everything that you said, where do you feel like the word and the essence of terroir factors into all of that? Do you even feel like there is an expression of that thought in various manufacturing countries, or the factories that you work with? Or does it come down to more of a personal component where you feel the people that you work with are also what sort of makes the terroir unique?
I believe it's a mixture of both. It's, they're stewards of the land. Obviously, I can only speak on Anganorsa, because I know their operation very well with their farming. Terroir does exist in the tobacco industry, which is why Esteli gives you spice, why Jalapa gives you sweet, and why Condega gives you earth. There's very specific soil types. It's very, very, very true. And I believe that they know how to farm to that land specifically, and that's really why their tobacco tastes the way it does, which is why Anganorsa material has that signature Anganorsa material, and which is why it's so highly prized and highly desired. And, they are masters of what they do, and they are the best at what they do. And, the Anganorsa material is Anganorsa. It's Eduardo Fernandez, it's his son Max, and it's the team. It's Jacinto, it's Arsenio before him. Obviously Arsenio is past, but what he instilled upon that team in the building years and the farming of that, for being the top fermentation expert in Cuba, coming over and taking over the fermentation and teaching them. We would never learn them what medio tiempo was if it wasn't for them. Telling them about the ugly little leaf that they used to pick out of Liero bales with tweezers. and then we know what it is, and then we can harvest it. Obviously it doesn't grow on every plant, but now we know where it is. We can harvest it, and we can give it the special processing that it needs to create to make it so unique. And that's the understanding. That's why the tobacco from them is exclusively different. It's because they understand all of that, and it's their job, it's their livelihood. So Eduardo is a large part of why he took a gamble on tobacco farming in the 80s, buying the land. So there was something there that he saw that was special, and it reigned supreme.
Obviously, across all your various lines and blends, there is always the unique underlying signature of Warped and your vision. Would you also say, though, that every single factory that you're working with brings a unique quality to the respective lines as well, so that you could tell them apart, and that the consumer even sort of has a clear perception of this is Warped and this is Warped, yet they come from two very unique places of origin and factories, so they have similarities that they share, but also their own characteristic and uniqueness?
Yeah, obviously when you work with, let's just take for example a Titan. Obviously they're all from Cuba, all level 9, masters. So you have to blend to that. You have to understand what the roller will tell you. They don't like rolling a certain size or shape, or they don't like working with a certain material. They'll tell you that. And so you're simply guided by that, and when the rollers get behind you and they really like something that you're blending, when they get to try it, like Colmena, they're like, this reminds them of Cuba, like you're onto something, because that's, that's what they grew up on. And so, we make more delicate blends from El Titan. We make more prone to Nicaraguan Puro in Nicaragua, utilizing a lot of different farms, a lot of different lots, which is why as you said, there's always an underlying, what you would say, signature of Warped. And to me, that's the sweetness. That's that underlying sweetness across all of them, but they all have their own identities. Flor de Valle being a little bit probably the most delicate one we offer, and then having Corto being powerful. You give the blend its due by giving it the proper name. Like really Lily Rojo, red lily. We have a lot of red pepper in there. We have a lot of like cinnamon and like things that so we do the part to make sure that everything lines up across. And then in the DR, you have the Dominican tobacco playing with a lot of the florals and a lot of the vegetation flavors that you get from Dominican tobacco, which can be beautiful, but you need to work with that material and find the contrasting flavor profile that will accentuate the country of origin. I didn't want to could I make a Nicaraguan Puro in the DR? Yeah, you could, but that's not speaking to the country. I want to use as much Dominican tobacco as possible to showcase the blend and to showcase the country. So that's really the deciding factor between all three. You can tell that something is usually warped by smoking it, but you'll know that this is Nicaraguan, this is the Dominican, and this is Miami. They all have their identities.
In that regard, Steve Newman over on Facebook asked, what would be, in your humble opinion, the signature Warped cigar for someone who is unfamiliar with your offerings and the various products that you have in the market?
There's probably, I would have to say, two, and there's a reason for that. One being La Colmena from El Titan. That I believe we refer to it here as called the flagship. And it's our flagship cigar. It's a cigar that everyone, it turned them, if they didn't think they would like something that's lighter body, because lighter body has no complexity and no depth. Then they smoke Colmena, and then they learn that, you can get complexity, you can get, that depth and the consistency. And really that's the flagship of, Warped, as we say. And then the other one would be GR88. Those are identifying as, and I've said it before, is that it took so long to blend GR88, that we put so much into it. I made it for obviously the milestone of the 30th birthday, but really when I was blending it and it got finished. And if anyone smoked GR88 before the CA ranking, that cigar was something different, something very special. And I believed when I finished it and I finally got it done after about 2 years of working on it, that I'm like, this is a life's work in a single cigar. And it truly was a very long journey to get there. It was the culmination of all of the knowledge, all the successes, all the failures, not just in the blend, and all the past blends that, for every blend that comes to market, there's 20 that didn't make the cut. Our humidors is full of things that I didn't think were good enough to go to market. It was the culmination of, just the business's growth in general, from idea from 18 to getting a ranked, number 3 cigar in the world. And it was just it was a wild journey and a culmination, emotional and all of that. And that cigar it says it all.
One of the primary questions that people in the cigar industry always ask is, what's new? And I believe it's rather tempting for manufacturers to respond to that by always thinking about new innovative blends, new lines to be brought out. Do you firmly believe in keeping a clear, concise, and rather narrow portfolio, because you so much believe in tradition, and you obviously adhere by those principles and values, that I would assume it's truly about building the legacy with your core blends and those core lines that will always be there?
Yeah. So for us, I think if you even just look at our portfolio at this point, no brand has more than 2 sizes. We have a very small, GR88 is 1 size, Colmena is 1 size, Flor de Valle is now 1 size, Corto is 1 size, Maestro del Tiempo is 2. So if you look, Chinchale is 1, Companion is 1. If you look at it, it's because I'll blend 10 different sizes and I choose the best one that has the best expression of that blend. We're not trying to make 8 SKUs per brand, and we're not trying to cater to everyone's size demand. And it's just not what we do. We try to express the best possible Vitola for that blend, and it's what its brand, its history, its legacy, it's everything. We're trying to do all of that to not, deviate from the true vision of it all. And it is tempting. Everyone always wants new. But for us, we have a large job in just making sure that the consistency of our core line is always consistent. That's a large undertaking. Making sure that we have the tobacco, making sure that we save the tobacco from when we find it, to make sure it's the consistency and everything. It's a large undertaking. Hostos will call me and he'll be like, hey, there's only, a few bales of the San Andrean wrapper for Companion left. I'm like, buy them all. I'm like, buy as much as you humanly possibly can, because we need to make sure that wrapper, which is a signature of Companion, is exactly what it's supposed to be. And so that's the hard part, is the consistency part. And then the hard part is consumer demand of making sure there's always something new. We're very slow. You guys know we're very slow. It takes us a long time to develop things. But when we do it, we do it right. We do it right. And that's just the way that we do it. We're not hyper moving blends in and out, brands in and out. That's not us. We try to maintain the consistency above all else.
Quick question. That being said, do you have a specific Vitola that you normally use for test blending and as your sort of North Star?
Corona Gorda, 46, 5 and 5/8.
Excellent.
Yep, it's the perfect ratio of filler, binder, wrapper.
Great stuff. And I believe Charlie had a question that perfectly bounces off what you just said. Charlie, fire away.
Hey, Kyle, we haven't met, but I do enjoy Legacy and Legacy cigars. And, I've been down to Eduardo's factory 3 times, been down to pretty much everybody in Nicaragua, Dominican several times, and been to Cuba. And everybody does things differently. But the thing that sort of drives me a little bit nuts is the work that you have to do, and all of your compatriots, with basically keeping the consistency of your legacy cigars year to year. And I just cannot figure out, after all the years I've been down there going to see the farms and the factories, why the cigar industry really hasn't adopted a more literal model like the wine industry of having dates on the cigars. Because the cigar tobacco that you're getting from Eduardo and the specific fields that work for this specific one of your cigars. By the way, I grabbed a whole bunch of Warped Cigars from my recent road trip down from Texas to Florida. last week, which I really enjoyed. But you know, that's what the wine industry does. Every year is different, as you were talking about Mother Nature earlier. The tobacco is different, and I know you work hard to keep the consistency for your legacy cigars. But why aren't you guys just doing dates and calling it 2021? Because I know that the tobacco they're going to put in a cigar is going to have multi-years of different tobacco. It's going to have, you know, anywhere from 3 to 7 years of different aged tobaccos. But, or you could even name that particular blend in terms of a date. But otherwise, it's very, very hard for us as the consumer to say this particular cigar is similar to the one I had 3 years ago of the same brand and the same size.
Well, there's a few things to that. Number one, if it comes down to putting it on bands and stuff like that, that's variable printing. That just turns into a giant production mess in terms of cost. You know, especially nowadays with bands, just so guys, you know, everyone knows here, bands are about 5 times as much money as they were last year. So the printing costs are going exponentially higher. And so unless you're printing millions of bands a year, you know, the cost to do it is very difficult. And the second thing, you know, being there's no chronological order to this, you know, being exactly what you said, you know, Eduardo, like with the new Corojo 12, you know, that's a 6-year-old bale that I smoked last week. You know, we're not going to just put, you know, 6-year-old tobacco in there with the 12. You may have to put, you know, Criollo and Corojo from, you know, 18 and 19 in there, you know, and then that's a large part of it. So putting just a date on it or a year on it, a lot of brands are going to, the technology now is QR coding, you know, which we're looking into, as you know, I mentioned before, trying to be at the forefront. So a QR code at the bottom of a box will tell you, you know, the manufacturing date for the manufacturing year as close as possible. Obviously, then there's also the back end system of that, trying to create the data system to keep track of all of that. So it's really difficult. I know some manufacturers do it, you know, but box stamps are really the easiest way to kind of put together when that cigar was made. But for the most part, if you smoke, you know, a La Hacienda or a Corto, you know, you're going to know if you smoke it on enough basis, you know, you're going to know like that doesn't taste like Corto, that doesn't taste like La Hacienda or any brand that you enjoy, you know, so the palate is going to guide you more than a box code. If you have the box code, you have this deceptive thing in your brain, you know, it's like kind of the only thing I equate to is like drinking wine blind. Okay. If I give you a stunning vintage of Bordeaux, let's say 2010 or 2005, and I give it to you and you know it's no 5 or a 10, and you know that's an amazing vintage, your brain is going to instantaneously more than likely tell you, oh, this is an amazing product. If I give it to you blind versus another vintage that was mediocre, you may not know the difference. So you're kind of playing a trick on yourself a little bit by knowing like, oh, this is the best vintage of this or that. So that's kind of like what my mind immediately goes to is you can make yourself believe something that's not there. We do that, but without any of that knowledge. We do our best to make it the best possible and the most consistent possible across the board, you know, at all times.
Very tough to do. That's very tough to do year to year. I just think that that's one of the most amazing elements of your job, putting aside coming up with a blend that you like. It's keeping the consistency year to year so that brand continues on.
Correct. And if obviously you've been down to Anganorsa and you've been to the farms, you've been to Eduardo, and you know the holdings of Anganorsa and really how large they are. You know, his tobacco is large, he controls a lot, and he's buying more land. His dedication to being able to offer that consistency to his clients is second to none. You know, and Max, his son, who looks over the factory, he's incredible at his job. You know, we talk daily in order to make sure, like, you know, hey, we're picking the material, we're starting production. You know, do you want us to send you pre-rolls before I'm coming back on the flight on Friday? I can mail them to you before we start production. And that's the type of dedication that operation gives to us. And that's what we want, which is why you have that consistency. You know, the same thing we get from Santiago with Hostos, and much easier with Sandy. I just take the 1.5 hour drive down to Miami. And when she starts production, we just go ahead and taste all the way through. So we're all working on the same thing. So it's difficult, you know, when that's the benefit you get though with boutique brands is you get that personal touch. mass market stuff and big corporational stuff. I don't believe that they do that. I don't know for a fact, but or maybe they do, or they're just downgrade. I don't know what, but for us, we're hands-on. That's the biggest thing that we can tell you, is that what you get tastes and is consistent as it is, because we're doing it all day long. I have previous things from 5 or 6 years ago of Hacienda that I will smoke in comparison to recent shipments. Even though they're 5 or 6 year age, they have to have the same component. Also, I just smoke enough of our own brand to understand where our blends are in their aging process and how they are to come along. We refer back to our old notes. We have a database of our old notes and flavor profiles and everything. So we are putting every single touch that we can in order to do that. But really, the real benefit of everything is Eduardo. When it comes to the Aganorsa materials, that the control that they have over their tobacco, and the amount of tobacco that they have, and how much they grow and operate, we have the ability to really operate with him and make sure that the quality and the consistency is really always the same, because Eduardo, he loves what he does with Warped. We love what we do with Aganorsa. So we have access to make sure that our product is consistent.
Now that Arsenio's gone, just a separate question, Reinhard, sorry. Now that Arsenio's gone, who's sort of taking control of the blending activity for themselves, as well as helping out you when you want some help on specific tobacco there?
Really, it's kind of, if we have, considering I do all of the blending and always have, Arsenio was always amazing to go through that process with, when you wanted, help and you wanted to see what he thought. He didn't speak a lick of English. So if you didn't know Spanish and you spoke tobacco, you were okay. But really, he gave you a head nod. But now it's Jacinto. If you really want the Cuban stamp of approval, it's Jacinto. I was blending something down in November, and Jacinto literally kept taking the samples off the table and lighting them up when he would come in the room. And that's how you usually get the Cuban stamp of approval. But it's pretty much Max is headed up all the blending for Aganorsa's brands at this point. Aganorsa's own brands. Their clients, obviously Dion does his blending. We do our blending. Nick does his own blending. I mean, so pretty much you have everyone kind of join together and just kind of sit around the table and just drink coffee and just kind of review the day at the end of the day.
Yeah. Arsenio used to say that he smoked over 40 cigars a day. He
ain't wrong.
He died young, Reinhard. I think he was 82, 83, something like that.
Yeah, he when the last time I saw him, I think he knew. He said goodbye, and it just felt different. We miss him deeply. He was always so fun to be around. With his Pinar Del Rio baseball hat on all the time, and watching Cuban baseball on TV, and it was amazing to have him around and learn from. You learn a lot about what he's been through. He wrote, if everyone didn't know, he's written 3 books on cigars that are in the Cuban National Library. I mean, the man was a wealth of knowledge. But he's missed. We miss him, but we did learn a lot. I did learn a lot from him, and I want to take that knowledge that I learned from him, and I want to pass it on to other people in the industry, younger people in the industry, and I want them to take it. I want them to pass it on, because it's knowledge that needs to be passed on.
Well, keep it up, Kyle. We enjoy your cigars.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Charlie, many thanks for your question. And if you allow me to add just one comment to your first question, I believe that it's also sort of 2 different schools of thought when you take into consideration the consistency component and keeping your core product consistent over the years with a similar expression, whereas the vintage idea truly is a separate school of thought, where you want to create the unique expression of that particular vintage, and it has been done in the cigar industry as well, with the Cosecha project from Mombacho that Claudio started a while ago, and it's just 2 different sides of the same metal, and both, I believe. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for adding that. absolutely. And even if you look at other luxury consumable goods like cognac, which is so close to my heart, even there, most people will usually look for a standard quality and a consistent aroma and flavor profile. But quite a few of the manufacturers keep the vintages dear to their heart in order to present like a unique expression of what Mother Nature would give you in one particular year. So I guess it's just two different facets, and both definitely have something to them and something to add.
Very true.
Ian had a question for you, Mr. Gellis.
Sure.
Hi, Carl. Really enjoying the show, and thanks for your passion and enthusiasm. And like Charlie, I've been over to Nicaragua, and I had the pleasure to spend an hour with Eduardo and Arsenio and smoked cigars, and that was one of my favorite cigar memories. He was a wonderful man. And Eduardo is great, and I haven't had the privilege of tasting your cigars. I'm over in England, and I don't think we get them over here, but I'll certainly look them out when I can. And if Charlie recommends them, then I'm sure they're going to be good. Just to comment really about the smaller vitolas. As I get older, I've sort of gone off the really big stuff, the 6x60s and so on, and I prefer the smaller ones, and that is the tradition, and I think you get a lot more flavor. It's a shame, I think, that a lot of the American consumers think bigger is better, because I think often smaller is better. You get a more concentrated flavor and a really enjoyable smoke. So please keep it up and keep doing the smaller ring gauges, because there's really good quality there.
Yeah, it's interesting because in smaller formats, you can't hide anything, and the most expensive part of a cigar is the wrapper. So when you have a 70x7 or an 80x8, you're having a large amount of filler, and that filler you have to make strong or powerful, and you can use lower grade. When you're getting a very large dose and a large amount of smoke from something that can be very one-dimensional. So when you blend smaller profiles, you have to be very cognizant of your blending, because if it's too strong, it's gonna just take everything over. It's too dominant. If it's too light, it's too light. If it's harder, it's harder to do, but you get the flavor of wrapper, binder, and filler. And I think the consumer in the U.S., the niche market, and the boutique world is understanding that, and they like it because they are getting a better experience. The larger format cigars I've experienced are more one-dimensional, and because there's so much filler, you're not getting the binder, you're not getting the wrapper, you're not getting any of that. You're just getting this large dose of filler, and that, I believe, is the downfall of its one dimension. I don't see any other way around it. It's hard to blend a 45 and 5/8. You got a very small window to mess up on if you're going to mess up at all. I mean, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'm quite a slow smoker, so if I've got a sort of 56 or above ring gauge, I'll take 2 hours over that. And if it's not a good, interesting smoke, then if it's the same the whole way through, you sort of get a bit bored with it. So I really love some of the smaller cigars I've had that change and are complex and variety. So just please do what you're doing. I think you've got the right idea there, and don't let anybody tell you different.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Well, if you allow me, I would like to briefly welcome a special guest who joined us today, Rod, who will be our special guest of honor next week. Rod, it's a pleasure that you joined us today. Welcome to Light 'em Up, and we all tremendously look forward to hosting you next week to learn more about your incredible entrepreneurial journey and everything that you've brought to the table, both in the medical field, but also with your company, Perfect Smoke and Perfect Cigar Solution, with Perfect Draw and everything that you did. So we're looking forward to hosting you next week, and thank you for joining us today.
I look forward to it. Can you hear me?
Very well.
We can hear you.
Good.
See you.
Okay.
And what a backdrop. Great to have you. Mr. Gellis, before we wrap things up, first of all, I want to thank you from heart, because it's inspiring, it's reassuring, and absolutely mesmerizing to see such an eloquent young professional in the cigar industry. And I think it speaks volumes when you just explain your entrepreneurial journey, your vision, everything that you have accomplished at such a young age. I think the future of the cigar industry is bright because of people like yourself who respect and honor tradition and keep the fire alive, but at the same time always provide ingenuity and creativity and innovation to this industry. And finding that balance is very challenging, but at the same time inspiring. And so thank you very much. Your contribution to the industry is fantastic and it is greatly appreciated. And thank you so much for joining some of that with us today.
Well, thank you, Reinhard. Thank you for the kind words and thank you for having me. I'm glad I could tell a small piece of the journey of Warped and, the journey myself and how, we've ended up here. I look forward to continuing it and, growing it and trying to, instill a little bit more on the other side of the cigar, market that doesn't understand that, that you can have quality, you can have consistency, you can do things better. And that will offer a better future for our industry that, we'll have a battle, always have a battle, but, obviously we'll see what happens with, the FDA and how that's going to go. And obviously just the acceptance of it. But if numbers don't lie, our imports, across the industry are up exponentially, and, people are enjoying, the camaraderie and, the cigar world offers them. And I don't believe that trend is going to go down, anytime soon. I believe that it's just our job to make sure that we have the proper stewards of that, moving forward, to make sure it moves in the right direction and continues on a successful and respectable path. We just need the right individuals, and the right brands. And, we need people that want to peel back the curtain and show, the consumers, what we do, where the tobacco comes from, more about the tobacco, more about the soil and the people that, farm it. It's our job to tell that story because they can't tell their story. And, it's an interesting journey. And if any of you guys have the opportunity to go to a cigar factory in Nicaragua or Dominican Republic, or if you're ever in Miami, stop by Al Titan, and just see, a lot of those rollers, they've been rolling cigars since they were 16. They're in their 50s and their 60s now. Obviously that factory has a lot of fame. We had Maria, who was Castro's personal roller and the first woman roller in Cuba. She was at that factory. She tried to teach me how to roll one day and she just laughed at me, because it was just so bad but those are the incredible journeys and the incredible stories that you get at those factories. And just the versatility that they've been through. Now, when they left Cuba, whether they, when they defected and they came to the US, they could have done anything else they wanted. They had the land that they needed to, they could have done anything, but they chose to go back to what they love to do and make cigars. And that stands, true. I mean, that to me is amazing that they came from Cuba and they just kept making cigars because they loved it. And they love what they do. The energy you get in a cigar factory when you walk in, whether you've walked in one in Nicaragua or Miami or Cuba, going to Cuban cigar factories is one of my favorite things to do. Is just because the energy is just different there. A lot of yelling, screaming, arguing, a lot of passion. It's something that it's hard to beat. Whether people are cigar smokers or not, and they go into a cigar factory, they're intrigued. There's no other way to put it. It's an art form. You think it's an easy art. It is not easy. I've been doing this for 15 years and I will still rip wrapper leaf if I try to stretch it. It's not easy. And I think everyone needs to remember that if we take away anything from it, is that there is a human making that cigar, and that human has emotions, and that human is it's their art, it's their emotion in a physical product. And that's the beautiful part.
Amen to that. Mr. Gellis, I have one final question, but before
Sure.
we get to that, the show wouldn't be complete without saying hello to a very close friend, a gentleman who has been part of Light 'em Up for such a long time, and I'm very glad that he's here. Ryan, over to you, my brother.
How's everyone doing? Kyle, long time, right? From the Leaf Master. Right.
How you doing, Ryan? Good, man. How you doing? You're
How
not in
are
the
you?
suit. I don't know what to do here.
I know I'm in a t-shirt for a change, huh?
I know. How funny.
How you doing? It's good. It's good to
I'm doing
see you.
very
It's
good.
good to hear from you, sir.
It's good to see you too, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm about to say
Good.
something I never thought I would say, and it's really funny. And this is I'm going to share with you a bit of an intimate story. I remember the first time we ever saw you, and I was with my partner Abdul, and he was telling me, "Let's go see those cigars. I smoked them. They're amazing." And I kept on talking to him. I know we addressed several times the matter of the size, and I think the first time we ever met was 3 or 4 years ago. Well,
Very true.
4 years down the line, I just absolutely love and enjoy the sizes of the cigars that you produce. And I am very curious as, do you believe people enjoying the sizes of the cigars that you produce, or of the specific smaller vitolas that you focus on, is a sign of maturity for a smoker or not? That's my first question. The second question is, I'm curious as to how much are you planning or willing to take this forward in terms of your personal challenge of producing even smaller vitolas. I am not aware of, and we're in the process of getting your cigars, so excuse my ignorance. I'm not aware of whether you produce actually Lanceros. I'm a big, huge fan of Lanceros. And I know it's a bit of a challenging vitola. So do you believe enjoying smaller cigars is a sign of maturity as far as the smoker is concerned? And two, will you be pushing the envelope further, or belief, I should say?
Well, when it comes to the small ring gauge and maturity, I think that most people's first cigar is probably a smaller vitola. Mine happened to be a Monte number 2 because my father enjoyed smoking them, so I got thrown to the wolves with a 52, Bellicoso, which is fine. Great cigar to start as your first cigar. I believe that it just comes down to the fact of what feels right for the smoker. I mean, some people don't feel comfortable holding a 70 by 7. Some people feel comfortable holding a Corona or whatever the case may be. I believe that if they understand a little bit, it's hard to say, really. I can say one thing or I can say the other. If you like 70 ring gauge cigars, amazing. You smoke what you like. Don't let anyone ever tell you you made the wrong decision. If that's what you like, if you're as long as you're smoking a premium cigar, a handmade cigar, and it's a set, whatever it is, that's the wonderful thing about the cigar industry. No one can tell you any different. It's like someone can't tell you what to order as a drink. Like I like what I like. So it's not a sign of maturity. It's just, how you navigate, or it's an evolution of your cigar smoking journey. It means to say that you've gone through it all. You smoked from 70s down to 42s. You've smoked from 42s up to 70s. You've been through an incredible journey. And I believe that's the most important part. The cigar industry is very personal. So, when someone has their cigar downtime and they enjoy their cigar, that's their time. That's their personal time. And it's no one's right or right. There's no right or wrong way to put it. It's your time. No one's going to tell me any different. That's the way I would put that portion of the question. And your second question, I'm glad you brought that up because I do enjoy pushing the envelope. I don't know if any of you guys are, Cuban cigar enthusiasts. If you remember the punch margaritas, the little 28 by 4.5s.
Of course.
I am desperately trying to make one of those work from Nicaragua with the box press.
Oh wow!
Because if you remember the original ones that came in the dress box, they got the natural box press from being put. And we are attempting it, and it is something that I was passionate about that cigar 15 years ago, and I'm still passionate. Although they discontinued it, because Habanos SA is just making ridiculous discontinuations. I will bring that back. I will bring that size back, and I will bring it back in a warped way. And that's going to be, I believe that's going to be a very, very niche market, but I have a dedication to doing it.
That's brilliant. That's such good news.
And for Lanceros,
yeah.
Thank you, because it is a difficult task to do. You have to get the roller to be able to roll that size.
Exactly.
And to ask Lanceros, we do make Lanceros. We have El Oso Mama out of Miami that is Lancero. We did make the Moon Garden Lancero, Skyfire Lancero. And like you said before, it is a difficult vitola to make. It's very difficult. If they leave it, they turn it an extra quarter turn in the press, you now have a spear. and you can chuck that thing. So it's very difficult to roll that Patola. You need the right pair, and you need to have an understanding about how to roll that Patola. I love the size. I believe it's a great expression of, a classic, and we want to offer it more, but we're just not to a point that we have a pair system that we are comfortable with that production in Nicaragua.
Yep. Yeah.
Very difficult.
That's a whole lot of amazing news and a lot of stuff to digest. I wish you nothing but the best. I love your cigars. I love what they stand for. I love their uniqueness. And what can I say? God bless. All the best.
Thank you, Right. Thank you so much. Good to see you, my friend.
You too, always.
Thank you.
Right, brother. Thank you for chiming in. And final question, Mr. Gellis, if you were to start all over again, what would you do exclusively different this time?
Everyone could say that they would do something different. I believe that I needed to go through the trials and tribulations from the beginning that I went through. I needed to go through them to learn what not to do and what not to approach. I would probably go through it again, because the learning that you learn from it all, it allows you to navigate. If you're just looking to try to get into this industry and think that off the jump that you're going to have this insane growth, this and that, it takes a long time to get the trust of every single person in here who smoked one of our cigars, every single person watching. It takes a long time to build that trust. And when they smoke a warped, they pick a warped up they've never had. I believe that they have a level of trust with the brand that they know that they may not like it as their favorite cigar, but they're going to get the quality, they're going to get the consistency, they're going to get a flavorful experience, and they're going to enjoy it. And that's a trust factor. Trust doesn't come overnight. Trust is built through decades. And, doing this for 15 years, we're still earning the trust of many, smokers out there. We have the trust of a lot, and we look forward to gaining the trust of many, many more.
Excellent. All the very best for this tremendous journey. We look forward to everything that you will bring to the table in the years to come. And again, Mr. Gellis, thank you from heart for being with us today and for everything that you shared with us here at the Light 'em Up Lounge. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
To have you. All the very best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you for the time, everyone. It was an absolute pleasure. And if you guys ever have any further questions, please feel free to reach out on email at help@warpedcigars.com, or just message us on any of our social platforms. And, if you have questions, we always have the answers.
Excellent.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much from heart. To you, all the very best. We'll see you again next week with our special guest, Rod. And until then, be safe, be well, and light them up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.